And you need to give this to young people, you know. You need to give this to police officers, you know. You need to give this to preachers, you know. It is so immoral and hypocritical. If the preacher gets up in the pulpit and gives an anti-drug sermon, which I think they should, I mean, drugs, whether they're prescription or illicit, are just super destructive. Everybody knows that. I mean, sure, some opiate pills are fine if your leg's broken, you had surgery, but it just wrecks people's lives. They are making this stuff illegal so they can make money in the black market, no pun intended, and then still put you in prison. This is a social engineering plan. Also, it's part of the social engineering with the GMO and the additives in the food and water. They don't want you getting all natural, healthy things. They don't want you knowing that they've taken the good halogen iodine out of the salt and food and bread and put the bad halogens of bromide, and fluoride in that just fry your glands. They don't want you to know about Survival Shield X2, niacinamide. We're the only company that has the deep earth crystal source. All the rest is a seaweed source, which is still great. Sea salt's great if it's all you can get, or the seaweed-based stuff. That's what I first got on and changed my life, helped me lose a bunch of weight and get healthier. But, man, when I got on the crystal source, X2, Group had been trying to get a source of this for years. Dr. Group, and then finally, a couple years ago, had it, and took him years to get it together. And, I mean, you got to jump through DEA hoops, you name it, to get iodine, because it's a very powerful substance. The type we use is the crystal source. It turns into purple gas. If you put it on a hot plate, we have video of it. I mean, it's that pure. 200 million year old. Unbelievable what it does in your body. Just get ready for all the oil to come out all the time. Just what it's done for me and my family has been sensational. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. I got some good news and some bad news. It is going to sell out by the end of the week. The good news is it may only take 3 weeks to get more in. So if you want Survival Shield X2 discounted 10%, we're just keeping that discount until it sells out. When you get it with the lung cleanse, it's part of the Biodefense Pack, 10% off. You can also use the promo code NOW and get 5% off all the other products that are already discounted. DNA Force, Oxy Powder, already the lowest price on Oxy Powder, but 5% off promo code NOW. Super Male Vitality, Super Female Vitality. And again, this doesn't mimic testosterone. The concentrated organic herbs that are in there, it's stuff that's been developed to get your body to release what you're already supposed to have. With all the chemicals and the estrogen mimickers that are really screwing men up particularly. Then the formulations for women to help get them cleaned up. And you've heard the rave reviews. We are self-funding here. I fund this whole operation off books, videos, T-shirts, sponsors. We're not like NPR getting public money. We're not like MSNBC getting stimulus money. Our parent company is some weapons manufacturer. This is an operation set up by me, Alex Jones, to try to promote the truth. Because the truth will set us free, as Christ said. So Freeway Rick Ross is our guest. FreewayRick.com. You can get his book there as well, or at InfoWarsStore.com. Find the supplements at InfoWarsLife.com. Or, again, the book at InfoWarsStore.com. And please remember to support our local AM and FM affiliates. Whether it's Oklahoma City or I haven't plugged some of these new affiliates. We've got a new one in Chicago on top of our other affiliate. And we've also got Jasper, Texas just turned us on. It's like 5 or 6 new affiliates the last 2 weeks, and I haven't plugged them. They've told me to plug them. If you print those out again, I'll actually mention those on air. But please tell friends and family about the show if you're listening to it. It's a big deal that a show telling the truth like this can be heard. It's all word of mouth. Please support their local sponsors. Please tell them why you're supporting the sponsors, or become a sponsor. If you're a car dealership or a restaurant or a bookstore or a maid service or a hotel, whatever, you better support it. That's why we've gone from being on the weekends to weeknights to prime time on almost every affiliate that picks up our show, is because you have been supporting it. So you're the reason we're reaching more people. Now, Rick Ross, you've got the floor. You've told the story. Biggest cocaine dealer in West Coast history. When it came out in your trial, that the prosecution knew, the government knew, the DEA knew, the CIA knew, that you were one of their main distributors, but you didn't even know. I want to get into that relationship and more. But you'd gotten to the point in a few years to where, tell the story. Did you ever use? Why were you so successful? And then go ahead and walk through everything that happened. And then now what your message is to the youth about what's really going on. And we'll talk about Gary Webb.
Well, I did start using for a short time. You know, I got up to a point to where I probably had about $8,000 or $9,000. I thought I was rich. So, you know, when you're rich, you start experimenting, you know, with the drugs. And I looked up, all my money was gone. So I immediately quit using. You know, I went back and regrouped. You know, I learned that from tennis. When you're doing something wrong, you go back and you figure out what you're doing wrong. So I figured out that I couldn't use anymore. If I wanted to be rich, I had to stop using. So I stopped using, and I went on to get rich. Well, I made a lot of money. You know, like I said, I made $3 million a day sometimes. And then it got to the point to where I started seeing the effects that cocaine was having inside of my community. And it wasn't the effects that I initially thought that it was going to have. You know, I started seeing people pushing baskets. I started seeing women walking the streets and women doing anything to get high. And I started to rethink my position. That was around 88, 89. At that time, I threw my hands up. I said, you know what? I'm through with the cocaine business. I got enough money. I got more money now than I ever thought that I would have in my life. I got businesses. So I walked away. Well, what happened is the government came back and indicted me for the things that I'd already done. Went to prison. Did 5 years in prison. I got out. Immediately after I got out, they had Danilo Blandon started to call me. And his goal was to get me back inside of drugs, but I didn't want to go back. I was trying to go straight. He hounded me for like 6 months to introduce him to one of my friends. Once I made the introduction, my friend handed him a bag of money, and the cops swooped in, arrested all of us, and they got me for brokering the deal, for making the introduction, saying that I knew that they were going to be doing a drug deal, and for that reason that I aided and abetted the crime. Doing that crime, they gave me a life sentence. While I was sitting in jail doing this life sentence, fighting my case, I was approached by a reporter, Gary Webb. Well, Gary came down and he saw me. He started talking about that I was in something bigger than, you know, what I thought I was. But, you know, also, too, Alex, that there were some cops on my case. They called themselves the Freeway Task Force. And those cops were robbing and stealing and, you know, they let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed. They got indicted as well. So I meet Gary Webb, and he was like, oh, man, this is bigger than what you think it is. I'm thinking that they're talking about the crooked cops. You know, it's like 35, 40 cops that's running around robbing drug dealers, taking their money, and they became drug dealers themselves, really, because they was taking the drugs from one person, planting them on another person, and selling them to this person, and just a criminal enterprise. I mean, the whole war on drugs is just like one big hoax of one person benefiting this one, another one benefiting that way. But at the end of the day, guys like myself get caught in the middle, and I believe that we're the ones who's paying the biggest price. Not necessarily myself, because when I was in prison, I couldn't cry about my time. You know, if they'd have gave me the life sentence, I'd have had to do the rest of my life in prison. I could have accepted that because I knew that what I was doing. You know, I knew I was selling drugs, and I knew that I shouldn't have been selling drugs after a period of time.
You know, that's the key to integrity and sanity, I've learned, is admitting when you've been wrong, admitting and owning up to it. But then there's the giant hypocrisy. They're the ones bringing the drugs in, and they're the ones putting you in jail. That's 1,000 times worse, and they never own up to any of it. In fact, they sit up there like they're God, and they're clean, and they're good. That makes me want to throw up.
Well, you know, that's what really, really, started to affect me, you know, when I was in prison. And I'm like, once everything came out and I interviewed with the CIA, you know, the CIA came down to my jail cell.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, but let's also go back to your trial when you learn about all this with Gary Webb. Tell that story, because Webb talked about how you got threatened out in the hall, threatened to kill him and stuff. They didn't just threaten to kill his kids. I mean, the feds themselves that were there, not just the CIA, they were basically all in on it. It's
the
just...
DA, I mean, they sandbagged us doing trial. We're going to trial. So we have there's a period in court where you get to interview the informant, because we never talk to the informant. We don't know what the informant's going to say. You don't have no clue about what the person who's going to testify against you going to say. So the court has a thing where they call a pre-trial hearing, where the informant is supposed to come to like a little room. I couldn't be there, but my lawyer was supposed to be there, and Gary was supposed to be there. Well, anyway, Blandon comes to this hearing, and when they get in the room and my lawyer wants to ask him some questions, and the guy said, everything that I got to say, I'm going to say during trial. So we don't know what this guy is going to say. So we start...
You were unable to ever do a deposition?
No deposition with this guy. So when we get to trial, my lawyer don't have a clue what's going on. All the information that Gary has, we don't have this information. And Gary's not giving it to us. He didn't give us this information at first because Gary knew I had the relationship with LA Times. So I felt that Gary was worried about me leaking his information to Jesse Katz at LA Times because, you know, me and Jesse Katz still had a relationship where we talk once in a while. So Gary didn't give it to us. We start trial, and in the middle of trial, my lawyer keeps running back and forth to Gary. Gary's in the audience. So he's at the trial table with me, and he gets up from the